So the other day I was really happy to see that new little box that shows up in the lower left-hand corner of AppSheet saying that there's a new feature. And I see that thing pop up all the time, but usually it's just telling me the same feature that's already been there, but there's actually a new one in this case. And it's called AI Extract Rows. It's currently in preview, and it works much like the existing AI Extract feature, which recently went to general availability. But the AI Extract, the existing one, just takes data from an image or a PDF or something like that and looks for data within that image and pulls out specific values into a record within AppSheet. This new one works just like that, but instead of just pulling out one record, it's able to look at something like a purchase order or an invoice or a bank statement or something like that that has a table of data and pull out all the columns of that data and insert them into specific rows within your app sheet. So there's really potential huge time savings if you need something like this. One thing to call out about this feature and all the other AI features within AppSheet are that they do require an enterprise license. However, if this is something that you need, the potential time savings could probably easily pay for that license, because certainly if you're paying someone to manually go through and pull this kind of information out and put it into a spreadsheet or something like that, there's a huge amount of time that could be saved by this. So what I did was I put together about an 18-minute video. I start with a blank Google Sheet and build out a full example using this. I found an example credit card statement type of document online that I used as the actual input that we're testing with. I will include the link to that down in the description so that if you want to try this exact example, you'll have that and you can repeat exactly what I have here. So the video is about 18 minutes long and it starts right here. All right, we're going to build something completely from scratch here. And I thought a good example use case for this feature is like a credit card statement or a bank statement or something like that, where you have a bunch of line items that are in a PDF or in something that you're actually scanning in, and you want to import all that data, for example, all of the data that's listed here, into a table without having to retype all that, which would obviously be a lot of work. I didn't want to use my own credit card or my own bank statement for this, so I found this example online. I think it was at the sec.gov website or something like that. I will include a link to this document in case you want to do the same thing, that you can test with it yourself. But again, I'm just going to build something to pull in all of these line items that we have here into AppSheet automatically. So in order to do that, we want to start by replicating or kind of setting up in our sheet, and which will be our database, what these actual columns are here. But before we even get to that, when we get into using this new feature in a moment, you really need two different places here. You need the one table in AppSheet for the document that you're going to be importing, and then you need another table where you're going to have all the rows. And AppSheet wants to see a link between those, or I shouldn't say it wants to see, it creates a link between those two things when you actually do the import. So we need to define both of those things before we start yet. So the first one is pretty simple. I'm just going to call this entire sheet transactions. And then this first one is going to be for the document. So I'm going to call this one document, or let's call it statements, since that's what this thing really is the actual statement document. So we're going to put in an ID for this document that we'll use as our AppSheet ID, and then the PDF, which is going to be the actual PDF that we're going to import. So that's pretty straightforward. That's our one table. And then our next table is going to be the actual transaction. So I'm going to create another sheet for that. And in this one, we basically want to create all of the columns that we have here. So the first one is a reference number. The second one is a transaction date. Third one is a post date. Fourth one is a description. And the next one is an amount. We're gonna have to add a little bit more to this. We'll see once we get into AppSheet, and I'll talk about that once we get there. But that's at least our starting point for what each one of these tables is gonna look like. All right, that's the data. We're ready to create our AppSheet app now. So I can go here, extensions, AppSheet, create app. All right, we've got our app here. Let's look at our data tables. So unfortunately, whenever you create an app using that little extension thing in AppSheet, it only imports the first sheet. I really wish that it would import all of them so you don't have to do it manually. So anyway, but it is what it is. This is what we have here. We have our ID for a particular record, particular document or statement that we're going to be importing. See that it's already assigning a unique ID, which is fine for that. And then we have the PDF here, which defaulted to text. We want to actually make that a file, since what we're going to import here is a file. So I'm going to change the type to file. And then we need to just add in our other row here. So I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say transactions. Okay, this is the document. And I'm going to add in that table, or that sheet as a table. All right, and now we've got this. So let's just go edit the types here a little bit too. So we have the reference number, which actually isn't a number. AppSheet has assumed it was a number just based on the name, but you see that it's actually alphanumeric here. So you want to change that to text. We'll leave that as the key for the moment, but again, we're going to need to change that in a minute. Next thing is the transaction date as a date is fine. Post date as a date is fine. Description, it defaulted to long text. It's not actually that long, so we can just make it regular text. And the amount, it defaulted to a number, but it's really a price, a really currency that we want to include there. So I'm going to change that to price. All right, that is good. And I'm going to go ahead and proceed with setup, and then we'll go back and once we see why we need to adjust some things, we'll go back and actually adjust them. So we got our two tables now. We got the statements here. I can go and create a new statement, select the PDF. And what we want to do is actually set up our automation in order to be able to, when a new PDF statement is added, go and run the AI extraction and create some rows within our transactions table from that. But before that, we have the table here, but we need an actual view to be able to see the table. So let's add that first. We'll go in here. And actually, even before I do that, let's just change the icon on statements here. I always like to have something other than the default list icon there. So I think earlier I was looking at invoice. Thought this one was good for a statement, so I'll change that to that. And then we want to add a new table under our primary navigation here. I'm going to make it a table view. This is going to be on name transactions to go along with that transactions table. I'm going to change it to point to the transactions table itself. I'm going to want it to appear later so that it appears, so the statements appear on the left and the transactions appear on the right. And we want to give this one an icon too. So let's maybe put if there's like a currency icon or something like that, that will work. We'll use this one for the transactions. Okay, let me save that. And now we're ready to go in, actually add our automation for this. So I'm going to go here under automations. I'm going to create an automation, create a bot. And what I want this to trigger on is a new record being added to the statements table. So statements is already selected there. I'm going to uncheck these. So ads is the thing that we're monitoring specifically. All of this stuff as far as condition can stay as it is, and we'll just call this statement added. And then we can add a step. Going to create a new step. We'll call this extract rows. And the actual action we want to run here is an AI task One quick call out here too is unfortunately this requires all these AI tasks require an AppSheet Enterprise plan. So if you don't have an AppSheet Enterprise plan, that will be grayed out and you won't actually be able to do it. I really wish that this stuff was available in at least Core, just so that more people have access to them. But for now, they have them as enterprise only. So you will have to have at least the account that you're building with be an enterprise account in order to be able to access this. All right, but the next thing that we want to do is run an AI task, and you see there's a new one here that just showed up recently called extract rows. So you're going to select that, and then it's asking for the input column, and we want here to select the PDF, so the actual PDF that we uploaded. All right, now if I go down here, you're going to see that there's no tables available for me to import to. And the reason for that is because it says that we need to have that link that I was talking about before between the statements and the actual rows that we want to import to, the actual transaction rows that we want to import to. So let's go back and add that, and then we should be able to proceed with the rest of this. I'm going to save this for a second. You see it's failing just because it's not set up correctly yet. So let's go back here again. Let's open up our data source, which is the same as that one. And basically just within here, we need to add in another column, and I'm going to call this statement ID. Okay, we'll save that, go back here and refresh or regenerate from the data source. All right, so now I have a statement ID here, and this again is going to be a reference to the statements table. So I want to change this to ref, and I want to change the source table to statements, and that is good. Save there. Go back to our automation again, and now you can see that I can add rows to transactions. So we got past that thing. All right, and then the last thing that we want to make a data change for is that you see here that we have all of our different columns that we can populate except for the reference number. And the reason for that is because it won't let you populate the key of a record with this particular method. So what I want to do is I'm going to go back to my table one more time again, and I'm going to give it a different unique ID for the actual key, AppSheet key that we're using, and then we'll just populate the reference ID as a regular field so that we're able to actually save that value in there. Let me go back here one more time again, view data source. So we have the reference number, which again is currently the key. I want to instead add another column here. I'm going to call it transaction ID. I'm going to go back into AppSheet. I'm going to refresh or regenerate. And then in AppSheet, I now want this to be the key, and I don't want the reference number to be the key. And I probably also want the description to be the label, because that probably makes a lot more sense than the reference number if you as a human are looking at it. So I'll make that the label, and we'll save this. Go back again. And so now it's saying it wants to see that it's actually assigning a unique ID to the records. So I need to go back to my records again for my ID. And I want to set the initial value for transaction ID to unique ID, just so it generates a unique ID for that particular row. All right, and now we're just getting an error here saying that the reference number is required and it's not currently being set. That's because we had it as the key before. However, we are going to set reference number here anyway, so that should take care of that error. So let's go. The first thing we're going to set is the reference number, and we basically just need to add each one of the fields or each one of the columns that we want to add here. So the first one was reference number, the second one was transaction date, third one was post date, it's already there. Fourth one was description, fifth one was amount. All right, so we have all those things covered. Now let's save, and I think that error should go away. It did. All right, that's good. All right, and then the last thing that we want, or I guess two final things that we want to cover here. First, it helps, as it's saying here, column descriptions help describe to the AI what to actually look for in this. So you're basically just giving it this document. It doesn't know, it doesn't understand this document at all. So by giving your columns, the ones that we're importing to for the transactions, descriptions that say, what exactly to look for within the document, it helps the AI understand what you want to pull in there. So in order to do that, let's go back to our table again for transactions. And for transaction ID, that's the key. We can leave that as is. The reference number, that one, we don't really need a description. Maybe we'll just say like an alphanumeric value that represents a transaction. But since the name is the name that we actually have in the document there, it would probably be okay. So we'll just say here alpha ID that represents the transaction. Okay, and then for the next one is transaction date. So, and it's called trans date here. So on this, I'll just say the transaction date, also known as trans date. And for post date, that's exactly as is. So I don't think we need to mess with that one. And then let's just take this actual text and use that as a description for the description. So right now it just says a description, but we'll give it a little more, a little bit more detail with what exactly it had there. All right, and then the final thing to do, oh, amount is amount too, so that should be fine. The final thing to call out here is that in our PDF, it just has months and dates. It doesn't have any year for these things. And we wanted to actually like have the year that's relative to whenever this particular PDF was created. So what I'm going to give in the instructions, I'm going to say, look at the date and use at the top of the document and use that as the year for all of the line items. So you can do that back in our actual like bot automation here, and that is down here. And I'm gonna say all of the line item dates are relative to the document year. Find the document year at the top of the document and use that for each line item date. All right. Hopefully that is clear to it. I think it's clear to me as a human reading it. Hopefully it's clear to the AI. Okay, this all should work now. Let's just rename our bot here to import line items or extract transactions. Save it and let's give it a try. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to add a new statement. I'm going to select the PDF. Save it. You see we got a little, this will take, you'll see the transaction here processing up in the upper right hand corner for a little bit because it's actually calling out to the AI in order to be able to process this thing, which takes a few seconds, more than just syncing a record like you would normally be doing in this case. All right, it says that it's done now, and let's look at our transactions. So there it is. You see that everything is imported for us. It's got the descriptions that came from everything. It's got the reference numbers. It's got all the dates relative to 2007, which was the date that's at the top of the document there, and the amount for everything. One thing that I do notice here is we have like the $450 here, which should be negative $450 because it's actually a payment. So what you'd probably want to do in that case, if you started to run into things like that, is in that last instruction that we provided, go in and say, if there's a minus after the number, it means that it's a negative number, meaning that it's a payment instead of actual cost transaction, so that it handles that properly and puts in a negative number there. If you had anything else like that was like special cases, you could call that kind of stuff out down in that instruction down at the bottom of here, as far as like what the special cases are to help the AI figure out exactly what to do there. All right, so that's AppSheet's new AI extract rows. If you have any questions about what I did in the video there or anything specific about this feature, ask them down in the comments. I'll do my best to answer. And I'd also love to hear what you think about this feature in general, so let me know down in the comments as well. All right, that's all I got for today. As always, thanks for watching and happy building.